Hi, and welcome to The Deep Dive, a sports technology focused podcast bringing together the brightest industry leaders to discuss emerging technology and the always evolving sports world. Today, we are looking at what it takes to be a startup founder. To tackle this, our host and venture partner Daniel Bernard is accompanied by two of our portfolio founders, Luke McCoy from LIGR and Pedro Mestriner from Horizm.
Hi, welcome everyone to The Deep Dive, Mindspring Capital's in-depth look at the sports tech ecosystem, venture capital, and everything around it. I'm Daniel Bernard, venture partner with Mindspring Capital, and I'm absolutely thrilled today to be joined by two of the founders of Mindspring Capital portfolio companies. We've got Luke McCoy from LIGR. I was about to say lager there. LIGR.
I'll take a lager.
It's afternoon your time over there, Luke. So yeah, I think
exactly.
It's
I can take a lager, yeah.
We got Pedro Mestriner from Horizm out in Barcelona. How are you guys doing?
Very good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
Pedro,
very good. All good.
okay, there you go.
It's good. No, it's good.
We're working. Okay, so I'm hoping that we can have a good chat today. I mean, basically, I might be chatting and interviewing you guys, but we are three entrepreneur founders. Those are my most exciting days, the roller coaster, the ups, the downs. I'd love it if we can have a chat about what makes us tick personally. We'll give you a chance to go into your companies just briefly, but we will be going in depth and personal with you guys. Are you ready for this today?
We are.
Yeah.
Let's
Good.
go.
Yeah.
My first question for you is, do you have any hidden tattoos and where are they? Okay, that was a joke. Okay, just to break the ice.
I was thinking time to answer that. I said, well, no. Yeah.
We'll leave that for the next podcast, but okay.
Let's go.
At least we've broken the ice a little bit with that one. But before we talk about your journeys personally, I'm going to give you 1 minute each to tell us what makes your company special, what makes them tick. LIGR, Luke, we'll start with you. The blurb on the website is the next generation of live graphics for a new era of sports broadcast. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I mean, even to expand on that a little bit more, we consider ourselves an operating system for live sports, and I think that is extremely unique. If you think that sports industries had competition management platforms, they've had registration platforms, but live streaming and broadcast is still relatively new. Everyone's getting their heads around it, and what we've developed is a platform that allows everyone to collaborate to produce a professional live stream and then ultimately commercialize that. And there are many jobs to be done when it comes to producing a professional live stream, from brands to live data and live scoring, to the digital team, to the social media team producing highlight. There's a lot that needs to be done, and we've created a single operating system and API to push that forward. And obviously a key function of that initially for our business was graphics. It was the hardest thing to do to produce a professional live stream and push brands into that. And so it's an exciting time for us moving forward.
That's fantastic. I mean, I personally, having worked in the sports broadcast industry about 17 years ago, so things have obviously moved on, but I remember just how complex it was to create that broadcast. You had to have so many crews and teams, and if you weren't super professional, there was no way you'd get a really good product. So this sounds like it really opens up the industry to a lot of people, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Pedro, over to you. Give us a minute on Horizm. What makes you
special? Now I'll try to it's great. And taking the train from Luke, actually, basically what we're doing is taking all the content that is being produced, for example, by Luke, for example, on the company, and we're able to value this properly as a market price, pack all this content, and able to help right holders either upsell or deliver as a sponsor, or we also help them to commercialize this directly. So we are part of this process. One is content generation, as we are now competing. Actually, the industry is a content generation industry. So we are able to value everything. So our biggest differentiation is we are not a passive logo only, counting basically, as we said, focus on media exposure. We are in the whole process helping any piece of content being valued. And then using artificial intelligence, of course, we can pack the whole bunch of content being produced by right holders and then go to market with this. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for the commercial side, basically. Very important. The console is a complementary tool, let's say, for the whole contents being produced, either live broadcasting on social media, on the web, or etc. We're able to take this content, value, say, guys, this is what it worth in the market. Let's go make out of some money of this. That's the most important thing. So that's music for right holders now. As you know, they need to generate content, but also they need to monetize this. That is something that was not happening in the last years because it was all focused on traditional sponsorship. The industry is shifting, brands are evolving as well, and that's where we are solving this pain point, which is basically real valuation, commercial tool focus.
I think it's so critical. I mean, even the pandemic has really driven this forward, the necessity to really understand the value of our digital assets as rights holders, as sponsors. And it was a bit hit and miss before, and this is what Horizm is coming to solve really, is to allow people to understand the value and then to leverage up and monetize from them. So, I mean, obviously...
And can I jump in there, Daniel? No, I just want to jump in because what Pedro's saying and what Horizm are doing, I can tell you now is what I call the holy grail. So we being in content generation and really inventory creation, right? So we create in-game broadcast inventory for these sports organizations to commercialize. But ultimately, and as much as we track every single display within our platform of that inventory, unless they know what it's worth, it's still very hard for them to sell that. And they're not often experts at selling that either. And so, we very much look forward to working with Pedro and Horizm actually directly because we can create the content, they can value the content, and together that's the flywheel that just generates more content and more commercialization and more content. And that's how you can get deeply into the long tail as well, which just opens up a whole nother world that no one knew existed. I mean, it used to be a myth. It was a myth. Like commercialization of the long tail of sports was a myth. No one could do it. It was impossible.
Correct.
And technology essentially, like what we're building, can do that. And I think that's exciting for the industry.
Yeah, exciting is an understatement for sure. And I know that when Mindspring Capital, we invested in Horizm first, and then we went over to LIGR. And when we were in the due diligence process with LIGR, we were thinking about the potential join up between your companies. So it was really exciting for us. And look, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, I've invested together with Mindspring. I love the companies, obviously. I'm not objective, but it's us. So, good to have you guys as part of our portfolio, and we hope that we can provide as much support going forward. Okay, that's great. I mean, we could talk about the businesses all day long. What I really want to talk about, as I said, is you guys, okay? And the first question I want to put to you is, can you point to something from way back in your childhood, maybe your teen years, that helped you become the people you are today? You're managing breakthrough companies, doing amazing things. What shaped you from your early years? Pedro, let's ask you first. Oh, no, actually, we'll start with Luke.
Yeah, we'll go with Luke. Yeah.
I think, to be honest, I was always a very competitive sports person. I mean, I'm working in sports. I sort of have a funny...
You're Australian.
I'm Australian. I mean, I have a funny history in the sense that, I came out of school and I started to do science. I then did biomedical science. I then did law. Like I flipped around in university for a while, and I remember at a point actually saying to my mum, just saying, I'm just going to do sports science. It's the only thing that I know I can just get through and enjoy, because I was just so driven towards sport and playing and competing in sports. And so I think that for me, the competition, and I see that in myself in business. I mean, you need to be a relatively competitive person to see an issue in an industry, to build something, to solve it, and then actually to take it to market, because you need to have resilience and you need to be able to stand up on your own 2 feet and compete for the win ultimately, right? And I think that, without that, it would have been tough. And I think the other thing that was sort of driving me in particular in the space we're in is that because I was such a competitive sportsman, I never saw myself play sports once, right? I'm only 32, and I was playing sort of fairly high level football / soccer when I was sort of 16, 17, but not once was it caught on video. Like, I don't have a single piece of vision. And that's what, 13, 14 years ago, right? And I never saw myself once. I don't have any record of that. And so that always drove me towards, I guess, video analysis, streaming. I was sort of first on board when the YouTube API came out for streaming, which was kind of wild, and sort of taught myself everything around that. Just because I saw the opportunity that, man, if I'm one, was one kid who thought he was pretty good at football, who never saw himself play. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's probably a few of them around who think the same as me, right? So solving that as a problem and then being, fairly ultra competitive in everything I do, probably explains where I am, right? I mean, when I look back at it, that's what I see. I remember certain things that put me on this path, I guess, that at the time you don't realize that's the thing driving you.
And it's not just seeing yourself, it's others seeing you as well. If you're at that, touching the pro levels, you want that to be out there in some way. And
absolutely, yeah.
In every sport, recruiting the best athletes is critical. And how are they going to be seeing these athletes? I've always thought about how amateur the recruitment process is in multi-billion-dollar sports like soccer. It's incredible, the amount of people who just fall by the wayside because they're not being seen, and being seen really is video in this day and age. So
yes, absolutely.
So the competitive nature, that's the thing. And I think you're right. I mean, Pedro, what do you think about that? Is it a key function of being an entrepreneur to be competitive, to have that drive?
100% on that, Luke, 100%. My background also comes from the sports, as you know well, being on the climbing side, that's in the backside. I was a professional athlete for a few years, even though my sport is not competing with another one. It's more against yourself, which is even more complicated sometimes. It's a more mental thing. And I think my background comes back a long time ago in Brazil, while even before I started to climb with my family. My dad was kind of an explorer. We always go fishing in the pre-Amazon jungle rivers for a week. This kind of explorations started, was very tough environment to survive actually when we were 10 or 11. And then, you cannot even put your hands in the water because of the super big snakes or the fishing or whatever. So it was very, the exploration, so always exploring, that's part of my climbing experience as well, even though I was doing big mountain climbs actually. But a bigger thing for me is exploring, so discovering new routes to climb a mountain. So that is, I think, the shape. So the competitive, for sure, I'm still competitive on the sports side, that's the base. But the sports brings you the mental condition as well to do this. It's, as Luke mentioned, is the grit, is the resilience, basically. This kind of constant, everybody's saying, oh, this is not possible. And you say, okay, I'm just continuing, it doesn't matter. This is, for me, that's the most important thing, is the courage, to take this step forward. And that's the base for everything that, at least in my case, shaped my life a lot, in general. Not even because of the business side, but as a person. So I 100% agree with Luke. The competitiveness on the sport is key element. That fire that you have here, they say, "Oh, let's go for it." And especially now when you have a mobile phone, you have different resources, you are able to have access to many other things around the world now. And that back in time was different for us. But also, I like one thing in my case was because of the sponsorship side. When I was climbing, biggest tough side was to have sponsors, and the way they were calculating the sponsorship was, I would climb a mountain, have lots of logo around here, and why they're giving me this money out of this, and basic was because we're featuring a newspaper, and then they used the centimeter square to say, okay, that logo appeared here. There was no relation. It was very tough to the, be a rock climber in Brazil. Imagine this, it's kind of no sense. It's very tough on that, So I think there's also, when we start back to sports here in terms of the business, so about the sponsorship, come back to that 20 something years ago, that was the tough moment as well. So
that's
it's a mix of explorations, sport, everything. It's pretty much what Luke said as well.
Let's touch on that resilience bit a little bit, because I think that a lot of people who who want to get into entrepreneurship, who want to start something, they have this view that it's all glamour and fantastic and cool, but it's, the three of us know it's not.
It's not at all. It's just zero of that.
It's really hard, especially if you're locked down in Australia like Luke all the time. It's really hard, and you need that toughness to get through the plethora of difficult times. And it's interesting when you talk about being out in the jungle and those difficult times when you were younger with your father. That's fascinating. I'm sure that shaped you a lot into being a professional mountain climber and then the founder that you are today. One question I do have is, when you've got a logo on your shirt and you're climbing a mountain, what do you have to just turn to the cameras.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell?
Yeah, that's what we use it to do. Actually, you climb a mountain and you take a Brazilian flag of course, and
Yeah.
then you have the logos here. But that was the only way.
Wow.
It was way the way you can measure something. But in the end, nowadays with social media, videos, etc., is a different thing. You don't even need that kind of exposure. You can have with the content side that you're generating should be more relevant than just putting this. This was back in time, but it was funny side. You always carry the summit day to go to a big mountain, and you always carry a whole bunch of stuffs that sometimes they get frozen or get wet, and then when you arrive they are completely like you don't even see the logo because the paint is terrible. It's very non-professional, but that was the old days.
Well, that's it. But the way the life works is that 10 years from now we'll look back to how it was in 2021. We'll go, look at those old days. How those
Of course,
absolutely.
Cycle of things as they are. We've got to push forward as we can. Luke, how does that resonate with you? That resilience required? Is there something that created resilience with you apart from just being Australian, which needs resilience anyway?
Yeah.
No, I'm not quite sure honestly what it was. I mean, I presume it's just within a personality trait. I mean, I do know that. I mean, I've had friends tell me that like they could never do what I do, and the reason why is because they've known me for so long, and they're onwards with their careers, and they've always made much more money than me in regards to salary, and they're buying a house, getting a more. It's like when you're a founder, that not all of that's to the wayside. You're completely focused on your business. I mean, we bootstrapped for the first 2.5 years of our business, right? And that was me and a founder, and my founder Adam. But what people don't realize in that is like you're bootstrapping. That means the money that you make is what pays your wage. And so, when you're not making any money, you don't have a wage, right? You've got a credit card, basically, right? And so I think that, the word resilience resonates quite well because I know like most of my friends all just said I would have quit 6 times by now. You know what I mean? Like they couldn't have gotten through not knowing where the money comes from, not knowing where it ends, not knowing where it's even truly starting. Like there's just founding companies is just all questions that are not answered yet, and most people can't handle that in their lives. Like they want to see where the end goal is. They want to know they can touch it. They want to know that there's a monthly wage coming in, and that if you can't get through that, then I wouldn't start a company because, as you mentioned, it all seems glorious because everyone reads basically every 18 months they read something about your company that is probably that you raised money if you're doing all right. And that seems amazing because they can't then fathom that amount of money. What they don't realize is none of that money goes to the founder. It goes to everyone else. It goes to everyone else to build a company. And then when you sell that company, the last money goes to the founder. And that's what they don't realize as well. So there's a lot of misconceptions around founding companies, and that if you are not resilient, don't start a company because it's just not. It is so hard, and it seems a lot more glorious than it is. And I can tell you, if we got my partner on here, she we've been together for 12 years, right? Since I was 20, she was 18, and so she's been through it like the whole time, right? And only now, after all that time, can I pay myself anything near what she is on after 12 years, right? Like that's a long time. So it's not all easy. It's not all easy.
She's needed a hell of a lot of resilience to spend all that time with you.
Yeah, exactly. She might have needed more resilience than me.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we all feel for sure. And I think it's so important, but I don't know if anyone really gets that until you've gone through it. So people will listen to this and they'll say, oh yeah, for sure, but I'm sure I can make it or whatever. And then that's why I think there's a very high percentage of startups that just don't make it because it's very difficult.
Absolutely. It's too hard. Yeah, it's extremely hard. And it's even more competitive than it ever has. I mean, that's the thing with technology as well, right? It's easier than ever to start a company, but harder than ever to succeed because everyone no idea is unique enough in this day and age with technology for there not to be 10 other people trying to do the same thing. It's just the only thing that matters with success at that point is resiliency to not quit, basically.
Exactly.
Talking as an investor nowadays, which by the way is a nicer position.
Yes.
I wish you guys make that change at some stage in your life as well. But when you talk as an investor, what you're saying, Luke, is so right. We get so many companies that come to the table and say, can we have your money? So the competition for that capital is enormous, and you have to stand out. And obviously, you guys did for us. That's why we put our money in, and we're delighted. And I think any venture capitalist would say it comes down hugely to the team and to that attitude, because, like you say, anyone can copy the tech or be close to the tech. It's quite simple in this day and age. It's the people that will make it happen.
Yeah,
and if we're going to
absolutely.
talk about that and the difficulties, I wanted to ask you, can you point to one particular time in your lives that you thought, that's it, it's not going right, I'm hitting a wall, I don't know how I'm going to go on from here? I've had that a couple of times, but
many times.
Is there one that you want to share? One, the worst, that bit where it was the darkest, you didn't know, Pedro, how you were going to get out of this or what your next step was. Maybe you went up and climbed.
Yeah, I have many of these, to be honest. I'm older than Luke, I guess, but I have many of them recently. But I think the time when I was climbing, actually, that was a tough moment when I decided to quit my job. My girlfriend left me. My dad got broken, actually, business in Brazil. And I continued to decide to climb for 2 years. And the way it was mentally was one of the toughest moments in my life. Everything was environmentally was bad. So nothing was helping me to get to the point I was supposed to. And of course, many times literally you can cry in the shower and say, what I'm doing here, why I'm here in the middle of nowhere doing this with the whole negative environment, and you continue. So that's is, and recently, this was let's say the bad side, but recently one actually with Horizm last year, I was in London negotiating with the fund previously from your guys actually for a previous round, and I remember taking everything was about to verbally commit it, and then came COVID. And COVID was, I went to London actually. When I was on the train on Gatwick Express to Victoria, I received a call from the fund, say, hey guys, we're not investing. The world is upside down now. It's on fire. I don't know what's going to happen. That day, I lost my bag actually with everything. I had the only jacket I have, so everything. Then I lost my flight. So I came back home literally naked because I had no investment. Lost my bag, I lost the flight. There was the lockdown coming in, announced it, so I had to rush back to find a flight to Spain, which was via Munich. Nightmare when you come down, and then on the way back from the airport, I drive with a motorbike because I live 20 minutes from the boardwalk. I got rain, and this was a spring rain, so I got home like literally crying, like why I'm doing this, and so that was. Everybody likes the nice things, but then there was the 24 hours of disaster. And I remember, having my daughter, and that was the only good thing, But there was the day that you said, I'm out, But then you take a shower, play a little bit, and next morning, okay, shave and go. That's nothing else to do, But that day, I have to tell you that it was, that's a huge role. I cannot control COVID. The world's on fire. Everybody's disaster, no? But I can laugh about this now, especially when I arrive. I remember the moment that I get into in the garage, completely wet, with no bag, no money from the investor, actually, and it was like, well, it's over. I'm gonna go to the mountains now and go back to live as a mountain guy there. So it was funny now, but actually 18 months ago it was like that was the day they said enough.
Wow.
But that's what Luke was saying. Then you have this moment of, bad night, take a shower the next morning, say, okay, let's do again. Let's continue. And nothing happened. When you receive a punch, you like a little bit like this, and then, okay, next morning, continue. Let's take the list again and continue. Because that's the beauty as well is there are more people and there are investors that can believe as well and different things. So it's just the continuity. It's just we're talking about this now in the last minutes, but that was one moment that I reached recently, let's say, the wall. No? So, but we are here, so that's good one. Tough day, I have to say.
What a story.
But that was tough. I have to tell you, it was one of the worst days recently. They don't have other ones, but this one was fresh one with Horizm was like, oh my God, what's happening here?
What a story. Okay, Luke, you're gonna have to go some to match that story.
Well, I was gonna say, there's no way I can match that story. It's funny. Our raising stories around COVID were all lucky. They were all we raised during no lockdown period. Like we got so lucky, I guess, with timing, right? And obviously, Pedro, you're talking about unlucky timing in that sense.
Yeah.
I guess where, like, for me, I think one of the hardest things is riding the wins and the losses. I mean, as Pedro was just talking about, you wake up one day and it feels like the world's falling over, and then you wake up the next day and something comes out of the blue. I mean, we're in the live game, right? So the issue with live is it's live. So if things go wrong, it's live. And I sort of have something I always remind my team, that it doesn't matter how big the client is, they're live. And they have fans that are watching those live games, and that whether or not it's 50 people watching, a local football game, or it's 20,000 people, watching a cricket game that we do for the Women's Big Bash League or something like that, right? Yeah. Each of those clients, whether or not it's Cricket Australia or it's a local club football that we haven't spoken to because they've self-serve signed themselves up to the app, we've never spoken to them, they're using the app, right? Like, if things go wrong, they're equally as important to both of those customers, right? And that is because we're live. And so, we continually ride wins and losses in that way, and need to be very stable as an application. But it is emotionally draining. I mean, like, the hardest thing for me on a day-to-day basis is, did anything go wrong? Because it's live. Because I started LIGR from being in a live environment, having a live production company, understanding how important it is to the client that I produce the right thing, and that to them it's the most important day in their year. Maybe you're doing a grand final or something like that. Think about that. And so any issues falls on that person who's employed you. And I just know the stress of it. And so now, obviously, from a business point of view, well, we might be powering hundreds, if not thousands of games, across a weekend, for example, and each one of those games is equally as important to each one of those customers, right? So it can be hard because, you can run into issues that you don't, you hit edge cases, right? Every business runs and hits in edge cases, and the difference is we're live. And so it can be very difficult. But one thing I always remind myself is that, when things can go wrong, and they all, and that they will go wrong at times, but it is amazing. That's one of the best things about being a startup, is that you do not know what's around the corner. So everyone else, if they're in if you're in a job, you know what that job is. Most days, you know what's going to happen in that job, right? So it's not, it might be exciting, but you know what it is. So it gets you through. We're in a startup. I mean, I can receive an email that's at 3 a.m. at night that I wake up to, obviously, in the morning, that might be this huge opportunity that I went to sleep not having yesterday, right? So like, that's what's exciting. And that, you gotta balance that when things go wrong, that there's always something in the future that's probably ready to go right. And that comes back to that resiliency as well, where it's, if you stick it out long enough and you believe in what you're doing, and you talk to your customers constantly who can vouch for you and tell you how much they love you, even if things do go wrong at times, that's what sort of gets you up the next morning. And who knows what happens in the next morning, right? And I think that's a big one for me, is that you just remind yourself that there is something there, as bad as this day might be, that tomorrow, literally, there could be something that turns up in your inbox, or you get a call or whatever, and you're suddenly flying again, and you've forgotten about yesterday. And that's startups. Like, that's founding a business, basically.
It all goes back to mindset, doesn't it? It's just having that right mindset about it, and understanding that basically, if you are riding the roller coaster, then the fact that there's a down, it really just means what you're saying, is that there will be that up.
There has to be an up.
It's probably a bit more scary, isn't it, when you're at the top? But I know.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, it's a roller coaster.
You know what I'm talking about. But let's use that actually a little bit, because we talked about those things where everything goes wrong. But as you say, Luke, there are those times where things go right, and it's exhilarating. And have you guys seen the Will Smith film, The Pursuit of Happiness? Have you seen that film?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. good. There's this moment, spoiler for anyone who hasn't watched it yet. There's this moment I love. I like the film anyway. And there's this moment I love where he gets the job at the end. Huge spoiler, sorry for anyone who hasn't seen it. And do you remember that scene? He's walking down Wall Street and there's the crowd of people and he is just clapping his hands because everything is just right. I remember having that sort of feeling a couple of times where I did a massive change, a huge migration went perfectly to schedule, something like that, where I was like, yeah, tell me about when that happened for you guys. What was that moment where it just all went right and you felt, yes, this is what I'm here for? Who wants this one first?
Look, go first. This is a good one.
So I guess for me, so we actually get a lot of this on a day-to-day basis because we do deep level data integrations with clients where you're literally waiting on the first game. Often the first game of a season is like this, where, I mean, for example, this morning, I'm going to get up at 4 a.m. and watch a comp that we've got starting, right? And that's a funny one where you're literally waiting because it's the first game of the season to receive data and then everything goes from there, right? So we actually get that feeling quite often. But I think in particular for us, it probably came with actually sort of signing our first larger contract, which was to do some work for a Cricket Australia competition when we were bootstrapped. I think it was $120,000 contract, right, for the year, which the time we were bootstrapped. So, you know, that might have been 60% of our revenue, right? Like at that time. And that's quite, like, that's huge. And you don't, because now, I mean, you know, now you raise money a few times and the money becomes like a number and you're just distributing that number around to succeed, right? But when you are bootstrapped and you get a contract like that off really an MVP software that was doing one thing very, very well, but that's all it was sort of doing. But then that allowing us to then really sort of hire and expand and say, hey, I think we're onto something here. Like that was quite a significant contract, you know, on a piece of software that was really built by one guy, right? Like that was it, you know, which was pretty wild. And so like that's one that I look back at and sort of think that really opened things up, and it did it very quickly where you just went, oh, okay, we're on here. You know, we should stop to celebrate this because that from then on everything flowed and we raised money and we revamped the product, we deployed it to the cloud. Like there was all these sort of things that came after that, and it was probably from getting one contract that you just don't really expect to get at that. I mean, we even, you know, we priced it at a point that we almost just thought we could never get it because like we priced it higher because it was just one of those things where we don't know what the value of this is yet. We know it's valuable, but it's valuable on what you'll pay for it to deliver a solution. And you know, and ultimately it's been a fantastic, you know, and we're still in that relationship, you know, 5-6 years later, which is unreal. And I think,
how did you get that information? The fact that the contract was closed, was it a phone call? Was it an email? What was it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was back and forward. I mean, it's classic sort of negotiation, though, right? But like, it is when you finally do get that contract signed, right? When it's that, you know, whether or not it's a digital, like when it, because it's I think at the time it was a 2-year deal as well, but I sort of remember it for its finances over the first year, and yeah, I mean, it's when you get it signed, you just think, oh, so how do we invoice? Like, you know, when do we invoice this? When do we get like?
Exactly.
Because it's money that you'd never seen before as a startup, where you're like, oh, so we got this money to now spend to grow the company, you know, like that was quite significant because it wasn't really a slow, it was like it was a boom, here you go, off you go, focus on it, build it. And from there, it just opened up the floodgates of opportunity because that's quite significant at that time. And look, we've been pretty lucky. I mean, we've not struggled to sort of commercialize, right? To get people to pay us money. I mean, scaling is our next obviously challenge. I mean, that's completely separate in a world of COVID. That is, you know, obviously difficult, and we know where we need to be with product for it. But yeah, getting someone to first pay you for something when you start your own business is like the bee's knees, right? I mean, when someone actually pays you for the work that you've done yourself, that's pretty tough to beat, in my opinion. That's pretty powerful.
Absolutely. Pedro, what about you? does that remind you of something, or what was your Will Smith pursuit
Yeah.
of happiness moment?
I think there are a few, of course, as an athlete in the mountainside, there's many of them, and besides this side, my daughter, etc. But in the business side, I think that was the good news. I had the bad days, but also I had the good days as well of being in the right place in the right time. When I went to pitch actually Real Madrid, our first client, and I went actually, the person in the reception put me in the wrong meeting room, and I met the wrong person, but was supposed to be the head of commercials. I was supposed to meet another guy more junior in the organization to start the conversations, and I met that time David Hobson, which was the chief commercial officer of Real Madrid. He went to the same wrong meeting room I was, and we came now and say, "What are you doing here?" "Well, I'm doing this," very American or North American guy. "And what are you doing?" "Well, I have this, and I have, like, you know what, I'm gonna pitch this guy." So I opened the computer, say, "Well, I'm doing this," and he was interested and said, "Well, this is great, and well, this is what I'm looking for. Well, actually, this is what we need in this organization, the whole industry, blah blah blah." And then someone came in looking for us for the right meetings actually, and he said, "No, no, no, we continue here." And we were there for like 15 minutes. He gave me his business card and said, "Well, I like what you're doing." And I said, "Well, could be something." Then I have my normal meeting, which was very different from this one. I was on the way back in the airplane, and I texted him, say, "Thank you very much for your time. Nice to meet you." And I thought this guy would never reply to me, typical, very C-level guy. And then I went to London, actually, to Leaders, to do a panel there by myself to present Horizm in front of the whole industry. And then on Sunday evening, I received a WhatsApp from David Hobson. And he said, "Look, I love what you're doing. I'm taking a plane. I'm going to do the panel with you." I said, "What?"
Oh,
And then
wow.
everything changed, because he came up to the panel, the organization. We were supposed to make a 20 people demo. It ended up for 350. We had to, I don't know, it's a night, it was chaos actually.
Good
That
chaos.
moment, that moment when we thought, and then of course Real Madrid became our first client, and then that's a magic moment, not because of the whole combination of being the wrong place, but in the right time with the right person and being ready. Of course, we still have the product nearly ready when we show it, but it was kind of the good one, I think, and that everything started from that wrong coincidence, and then someone saw it, say, "Okay, I'm going in." So my 20 people demo that probably would be for 10 became a 300 people. We have people waiting in line to watch us what we're talking. Of course, we have Real Madrid guy there, and I said, "Well, that's fantastic. He's actually telling what I'm supposed to tell, but his voice is even better than mine." So it was a good coincidence, that moment. But because we were there, as Luke was saying, we were there, and I was sometimes the bad moments, but this one precisely was the that we thought something is here, because if those guys are looking for us, now we need to scale. Of course, there's a lot of challenges, but something is here. So I think that was the good one for us, and that WhatsApp changed everything for us as a company.
I think this is a fantastic story, but I think one of the really important things to point out here is that you never really know. You can plan and plan as much as you like, but if you show up like you guys have, then you might meet the right person at the right time or the wrong person at the right time, as it was.
Exactly.
And we as entrepreneurs, when you look at your journey, you can never plan it. You never know that this will lead to this, will lead to this. You can only do that in reverse and go, "Oh, I know when I met that guy, that led me to this, led me to that." I think that's a huge lesson for a lot of young entrepreneurs to just say, put yourself out there, and you will discover amazing things. Some of them will be difficult, some of them will be fantastic, but that's the only way to go about it. And that was a fantastic story to really prove that point. That's absolutely superb. I love it. The right person the wrong person at the right time.
Right time, exactly.
Was the most right person in the whole world. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. That was the guy who we were never expecting to talk to him in wrong meeting rooms, coincidentally in the same time, which was. And then he texted. That was a good thing that I texted him. I said he never replied. But anyway, these things is to, as you said, to share that we need to keep it there outside. Some people see it, and then of course something
I
good
never
will
thought
happen
I'd
as
say
well.
thank God for Spanish bureaucratic chaos, but hey,
That it is. That what it is. It was a completely wrong meeting room for all of us, and someone put us together there. So it was great.
That's absolutely superb. What a great story, Pedro. Thank you. Okay, I have time for one last question for you guys. Okay, it's a very simple one. What scares you? I want you to tell me. Put it out here. Come on, open up. Something scares us all. What scares you guys? Luke, what scares you?
I think mine's an obvious one. I mean, I think when you're in, I mean, like when you're a competitive guy like I am, and that you set out with a big ambitious goal, and you have targets you're in your own life, and that you need to be patient, obviously, to get to those targets at times, and because you don't know where the end goal is, you don't really know where the target is. You know it's somewhere in the future, and you're trying to get there. I mean, it's and I mean, as you grow a company and you employ people, and that there's people reliant on you. I mean, it's always, and then you've got investors. It's always to a point failure, right? It has to be. I think in my situation, because I've made many sacrifices in my life to put everything into the business, and so naturally, as someone who wants to succeed and wants to feel gratified with the direction I'm going, which, I mean, everyone's the hero of their own story, right? You're trying to get to a certain place and justify why you got to that place, right? Like, and that if you do not get there, at least on the journey that you're on now, I mean, that's a scary thought, right? Like, that is legitimately scary. I mean, and look, I'm probably lucky to this point. I don't have kids. I don't have things that and people, I guess, that are truly relying on me from a personal level yet. And I think that's probably scary if you've got a family. But no doubt, I mean, everything in my life is building, this business and moving it forward and trying to be a very globally relevant company who's achieving the goals that it wants to achieve. That ideally making many happy customers along the way. And so I think that, and that's what founders have to go to sleep with, is that failure is there tomorrow as well as your greatest success, and you've got to go to sleep with that every night, because that truly is there's two directions on it, right? And so for me, it's a very, like, I'm very focused, and so that's the only other outcome, right? It's pretty binary to me. It's like, we succeed or we don't, but it doesn't mean that I'm not scared of not getting there. But at the same time, it drives you then more so to succeed, because if the only other option is failure, I'm pretty sure you're going to focus on succeeding and not focusing on failing. So it's a pretty easy decision to make. But yeah, I mean, look, that might be a bit of a cop-out answer, but it really, it's got to, I mean, if you're going to be competitive in business and you want to succeed, I mean, there's always the other side of that. You don't win everything in life, and you don't win everything in competition. You lose at times, right? And so it's always there. It's always there. But again, that drives me. So it probably works in that sense.
I don't see that as a cop-out answer at all. I think it's something that we could all completely identify with. Especially, you made a very important point there about the dependence in our lives. It scared me to death when I thought that I wasn't going to be able to pay salaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a tough one when you think, because you've got customers, you want to keep them happy. You've got your people who you're, especially in a startup, they're part of your lives. They're not just people you work with, they're your friends. They go through the whole roller coaster with you. And all of a sudden, if you can't pay their salaries, and things like that, it's really tough. And you said you don't have kids yet. Things go sky high when you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Believe me, that's the point, actually. From my side, precisely that it is, Luke. That is the point. I have a daughter, and I think that pressure, I try not to be there, but it's still here.
Still there. It's still there.
Still there. We think that, okay, we are powerful, we are strong, but that one is the one that scares me most, to be honest. Related to business, like Luke, it's up and down, and let's continue. And also on my side, I've been to so many dead or alive situations because of the climbing, that you have to take decisions very fast, that if you take a wrong one, it's not that you lose a business or a budget, you kill yourself, your friends, in the whole expedition. Actually, you take decision, you kill the whole group. So that the business side is a different thing. So I'm not scared about that one. But the family thing, for sure. And the last one actually is spiders, Luke. I love the spiders, but now I have kind of phobia of spiders, because
So do I, actually. So do I. I'm
before
not a chance.
I was really engaged with the spiders. Actually, when I was young, I have in my room, one of them escaped. Since that, my mom got so freaking out about that, and I got really scared, and I'm still scared about spiders. So that's one important thing, very important, nothing to do with business, but it scares me a lot now.
Good to know. Good to know. There are certain areas of Australia you won't want to step.
That's right. Brazilian, Australian here we have kind of nice ones.
Yeah, we've got the dangerous spiders and the snakes. The snakes. I'm a big golf fan, and where I play golf, there's even today one of my friends was playing and sent me a photo, and it was just a big brown snake on the fairway of the golf course that I play all the time. And like snakes and spiders, definitely not that excited for them.
Not only
If you're on a golf course like that, that's good motivation not to hit it into the rough, I'm sure.
Well, and especially there's a lot of rough. Like it's a links course where if your ball's sort of in there, it's deep in there. And honestly, at this sort of time of the year where apparently the snakes are they're breeding, it's a dangerous time. Like it's honestly, there's sometimes if a ball, I'm just not looking in there. It's not worth it. Because like you just can't. I don't want to step on a brown snake. No chance.
All of a sudden, your lockdown doesn't sound so bad, Luke.
Well, yeah. I mean, funnily enough, in Australia, the only thing you can actually do is play golf because it's considered exercise. Whereas you can't do community sports, but you can play golf because it's walking considered exercise in pairs of twos. So you can only do it in pairs of twos, set of groups of fours, but it's the only thing you can do.
That's funny. That's amazing. Well, I hope you managed to stay away from the snakes. Pedro, I hope you managed to stay away from the spiders. This has been absolute joy chatting to you guys. Thank you very much for putting it out there, chatting to me today. I really love it. And I wish you all the best of success. And I look forward to the next round, whether it's the next podcast or the next investment round. I'm sure you guys are going to go from strength to strength. You've got fantastic companies and you're fantastic people. And that's what counts more than anything else. So really, so much gratitude to you guys for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Cheers, Daniel.
All right.
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. Let us know what you think of the discussion. To stay updated with future podcasts and more industry expertise, make sure to follow Mindspring Capital and our partners on LinkedIn.